Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So Terra, a continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA D10 Nano project, and obviously if you can't tell already, we're talking Sega Saturn tonight. And that is because about 12 hours ago, SRG320 updated the GitHub repository, and we have two new builds, one for single RAM and double RAM. It's always awesome to see SRG320 pop up with an update because we know that means he is fine where he is, and it means we get to talk about some more Saturn. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But everyone has been asking me to retest Grandia, and the great thing is, as of this morning, this game is way more stable, especially in all of the FMV sequences. But in-game right here, this just looks like the Grandia you know and love. It is such a classic role-playing game, and we have the English translation patch. You might still see a graphical glitch here and there, but what really happened was previously all of the FMV files would basically show either garbage or a double image with interlacing. Now if we move over to the FMV, you're going to see it is crystal clear, it's exactly as you would expect. It just looks like you're playing on a real Sega Saturn. And that's absolutely awesome because Grandia is one of the best role-playing games of all time in my opinion, but you can tell me down below in the comments which one your favorite is. And it's definitely not just Grandia that got improvements or started working. We got a couple other games in this video to show you that either started working today or have had vast improvements. But it's awesome to get these FMV sequences. Like I said before, they were just mangled. Once you actually got into the game, it looked relatively decent, but there were some issues with some of the interlacing video and otherwise. And when SRG320 published the notes for his Patreon members, this was one of the games he mentioned having fixed, so it was really easy to jump back into Grandia and take another look. But I just absolutely love how this game looks, and it's looking so good on the Sega Saturn. The mix of sprites with the 3D elements, it just works, especially when you go to the overworld map and you're able to see all the buildings in 3D in real time. It's unlike what you usually saw of games of this era, and it's just so spectacular to see here. Now you will see every once in a while the game is going to exhibit some slowdown, and it's been a minute since I tested on my real Sega Saturn hardware. It's probably been like over a year since I've actually checked this game out. I don't feel like it slowed down as much, but leave me a comment down below and you tell me, because this does seem like maybe the core is just dropping a little bit of frame rate there. But again, Grandia is just so amazing, and I know a lot of people haven't played this game before. Maybe your first playthrough can be on the Sega Saturn, but it's so much fun to see the improvements here, and I understand why you guys request this, because of all the games that I've seen in comments requested to get tested in future videos, Grandia is definitely the #1 game I see always mentioned, and I'm not surprised whatsoever. It is that much of a classic, and here on the current Sega Saturn core that released like 12 hours ago, it is so much better than it was before. And this is a very long game. It's very possible it freezes midway through, so I don't know if it would be ready yet to try to actually do a full playthrough. But when the core is finally released, if you've never played Grandia before, it's definitely one of the first games you should check out if you're into role-playing games. And if you're not sure if you're into role-playing games, I think you should try it anyway. But tell me what games you want to see tested on the next video. We got a new core, that means retesting time is here. Just leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see. But I love this pot lid just leaning up against a wall, ends up becoming crucial to the story and an item you have to pick up. But Grandia 100% proved in the current core today, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't yet. Now moving on to another game, another awesome Sega Saturn shmup. This is Sexy Proteus. It is such a weird cute 'em up, but Konami knew what they were doing here, and this is a game that's definitely improved in recent Saturn cores, and a game that a lot of you guys keep asking to see. That's probably because it is just so wild and so much fun and so colorful. It's one of those games that is synonymous with the Sega Saturn. And the best part is, if you play this today, it just 100% works. All of the visuals, all of the sound effects, all the controls, if this was not on real Sega Saturn hardware, you would be hard pressed to tell. If you just handed me a controller, didn't show me what I was playing on, I don't know that I could actually tell the difference between Proteus on the current core and Sexy Proteus on the Sega Saturn. And that's pretty much the best mark I can give as far as the game test is concerned. If I couldn't tell the difference, then that means it's pretty close to accurate. Now I get it, I'm not an expert at every single game. If you see anything on the screen that doesn't look good to you, leave me a comment down below and I will look for it, because the best part is about 5,000 people each watched this video in the first 24 hours, and that's 5,000 sets of eyes versus my 2. And you guys always seem to see something that I don't, and I really do genuinely appreciate that. And if you've never somehow played Sexy Proteus before, it's an absolute hoot of a game. It's always got something weird and new and unique to show to you. It is always doing all this stuff with the sprites, kind of just being comical in nature. But the best part is it also has one of the best soundtracks as far as a shmup is concerned, and the good thing is with the current core, the sound quality seems absolute perfection to my ear. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll be right back. It's just an awesome soundtrack, and I hear absolutely nothing to my ear that sounds like it would be anything different than original hardware, but if you want to give it a shot, you definitely can play it, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. Now on to games that started working that didn't used to work before. We have Sega Touring Car. This is definitely not the best Sega racing game on the Sega Saturn. Daytona and Sega Rally are definitely going to get my nods, but this is a fun game that just takes a little while to get used to control-wise because it is quite slippery, and you definitely want to bring an analog controller to the party. Digital is very difficult. Last time I tested this game, I don't even remember if I was able to get in or not. I know it probably showed some graphics on the title screen that were corrupted and it froze, but I don't think I've ever actually gotten into the game. This was another game that SRG320 mentioned in his update notes, and as you can see right now, this game is 100% playing on the current Saturn core where it never used to play before. And that's the awesome thing about testing new cores. Sure, it's nice to see improvements like in Grandy where you got the FMV finally looking clean, but getting entirely new games that didn't work before, especially ones as well known as Sega Touring Car, it is great to see that. That means the core is maturing. Whatever was causing those freezing issues and corruption in the earlier cores has definitely been coded out and worked around, and now you can just jump in and play. And this is a big one. It shows off the 3D power of the Sega Saturn. I will say, as a Model 2 port, it definitely runs fast and does look good. It's just the digital steering that's going to 100% throw you in this game. If you don't have an analog controller for the Sega Saturn, I recommend you guys pick one up soon, or if you want to use just any other controller for the core that can do analog, I would recommend that as well, because it's one of those things. Playing this on a digital pad is just an exercise in absolute futility. You're just going to bounce off the wall a lot. I've gotten used to it, and if you just drop the accelerator and steer with no gas on, you can kind of get around the track. But the best part is you can actually get around the track because this game just did absolutely nothing on every previous core. It was not playable, and it's definitely not good if you drive directly into a wall, but we'll spin some donuts until we get to the next game. But Touring Car, you can pick it up and play it today on the current Sega Saturn core. The only weirdness I can see in the entire game is here on this next race menu, you get these little black lines that just shouldn't be there, but otherwise it is working as expected. Now, a game that's been promoted back to working that was broken in previous core revisions, it was a little bit of a regression, is going to be Rabbit. And you guys are just hungry for Rabbit footage because I always get comments for this game as well. And it always surprises and impresses me because I didn't think many people knew about this. If you don't know what Rabbit is, it's an awesome 2D fighting game that's definitely, I think, near as good as some of the Street Fighter or X-Men games on the Saturn, but it is just a one-off game. But the visuals, the sense of humor of this game, the music are all amazing, and now it is back to working on the Sega Saturn core as of today, and all of the sprite flickering and weirdness from previous cores is just gone. But I will say the music in this game is incredible, and it sounds near to perfect on the current core. Go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back. Awesome soundtrack, and the sound quality on the current core is great, and it's fun to have Rabbit back after it stopped working and got on the regression list. But it's not a bad thing when games do have regressions. That is how the development process works. When you're fixing things, when you're improving things, when you're rewriting things, games that used to work will break. I know it can be a short-term disappointment, but in the long term it means we're getting a better Sega Saturn core in the end. So with the new core, if you test some games and suddenly they stop working, that doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form the core is in worse shape. It just means that it's still in progress as far as the coding is concerned, and it will just improve from there. But if you want to play Rabbit today on the current core, it is now back to the working list, and it's such an awesome game. If you've never checked it out, I can't recommend it enough. Now on to another interesting behavior. Space Harrier didn't used to work, then it started working, and you'll see here on first load it is hitching. It's basically freezing and restarting itself time after time. It's a very weird behavior, but Andy D captured this one and he reset the core a second time, and then somehow magically when you actually get into the game it starts running at full speed. I have absolutely no idea why this is. You can leave me your opinion down below. It's an interesting behavior of the core that sometimes things won't work until you reset the core once, or sometimes things might work slightly better when you reset the core. But you'll see here now that that we're into Space Harrier, it is just drawing all those super scalar sprites and backgrounds, all of that parallax scrolling exactly like it should, but it's really weird that it won't do that the first time you load it up. But it's definitely an improvement because this game never used to work, and then it started working but would basically freeze very quickly. Now it 100% works correctly so long as you get lucky in your reset. But watch the motion on the screen, see if you notice anything. These games are just moving so fast. I couldn't detect anything when I watched through the footage that made me think this just didn't look like Space Harrier on the Sega Saturn. But again, I love you guys watching and commenting down below because you will notice things that I don't. You're like 5,000 sets of eyes, I am just one set of them. But again, I just don't get why that reset fixes it. I'm not sure if the core just gets out of line and weird things happen. Maybe a cold reboot would make it work better, but if you do play a game and you're noticing that there's some performance issues, you can always try resetting and seeing how it works better the second time around. After the second or third reset, if you see no improvement, that's just probably how the game works, but you may very well see an improvement after that first reset. And definitely after you've played a couple Sega Saturn games, maybe 2 or 3, I recommend a cold reboot of the MiSTer and then turning the core back on from the core menu itself, going back into Saturn and rebooting it. It seems to have better consistency if you actually give the MiSTer a cold boot and start from the beginning. But if you want to play Space Harrier today on the current core, maybe you can, maybe you can't, just depends on how lucky you get with that reset. Interesting behavior and an interesting result. Now let's move on to a beat 'em up because we definitely have to feature a second one in the video, and this is Neketsu Uyaku. I believe I pronounced that correctly, but my pronunciations are never right, but you guys love to tell me when they're wrong in the comments. All jokes aside about that, this is just an absolutely wild B-tier beat 'em up on the Sega Saturn, and if you play it on the current core today, outside of a tiny bit of audio crackling, it just seems to 100% work. It's got an awesome soundtrack, it's got some really weird trippy visuals, and at one point in time you're going to fight octopus in the inside of a sperm whale. That's just how this game rolls. It's weird, it knows it, and absolutely loves to run with it. Go ahead and listen for that crackle. I'll be back in about 30 seconds. It's just the slightest crackle in some of the kicks and punches, and it's one of those things. The core is getting so good now in some games, are really just kind of listening or looking for a stray pixel or a stray sound effect that might have a little bit of crackle in it. But honestly, if it wasn't for these headphones, I might not be able to hear it whatsoever, which is a great sign for the current core. And if you've never played this game before, I can't recommend you check it out enough. It is not the best beat 'em up of all time. It's definitely in a solid B tier category, but what it lacks in being the best of all time, it more than makes up for in sheer spectacle. This game is always showing you something new, unique, and different, and you'll see here we're going to break through this bridge after we beat the boss, and we're going to just 100% get swallowed by a sperm whale, and then take the next level in his absolute stomach with these squids here that look like they might be wearing a Slim Jim logo. I know they're not, but they give me Macho Man Randy Savage vibes, and that's what I'm going to go for. Although some of the design in the levels can be a little bit difficult, it's hard to try to fight an enemy when you're behind a whale's ribs. But again, this is another game that a lot of people request, and I totally get it. It's one of those games everyone loves playing on the Sega Saturn because it is just so strange, and of course we have to get out of the whale somehow, and how does that happen? Well, we get shot out of his blowhole with a bunch of water that was in his stomach. That is just how this game is, and it gets definitely weirder from here, but it's a ton of fun, and it is another game that you can 100% just play today on the Saturn core, and that's how good the core is currently doing. It's so easy now to find games that just work, where it used to be that maybe out of a list of 10 games I wanted to check out, only 5 or 6 would actually be able to run well enough to get footage from, but this game definitely one of those. But it's a new day and we got a brand new core, and that means there's 2 things to celebrate. 1, SRG320 is good where he is, and we're always happy when we know that, and 2, there's a new core that we can test new games on, and because this is so new, it's very possible that games that didn't work before now work, and you'll be seeing those on the channel in the next week or two. All of these videos when we get a new core are very quick turnaround times, so if you do know of new games that are working in the current core, leave me a comment down below. And of course, if you want to see other things tested, I love testing the games you request, tell me down there. But Sega Saturn is shaping up. We're getting a lot of core updates a lot quicker now, and I can't wait to see what other games are working on this current core. But short of that, go play some Sega Saturn, go test some games, and I will see you guys all next time. Bye bye.